Alrighty. Silvio, welcome back. We're changing up the format a little bit for this week's episode, but last time I checked, it's our podcast, so I'm pretty sure we can do whatever we want. Nice to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
So you are, I want to say you have like your your doctorate in Google Ads. So I think the hardest part about this episode for me is one, for me to not get in your way and stay out of the way. Two, not recording 5+ hours on this because I know that we totally could, and I know that people love that.
We can definitely go Joe Rogan style and for 3+ hours.
I think Gil would love that too. So just to kind of change up the format, we're going to look at this in 3 different ways. So we're going to get away a little bit from the lesson part, although I guess we're giving away some lessons to start. And then we're going to talk about the outlook from your perspective for Google Ads in 2022. And then we're timing this episode with the launch of Google Ads and Metadata. So we'll actually get your take on what that means for B2B marketers, how it's going to make their lives easier, and give a behind the scenes look at how this all came about and what we've been up to for the last year.
Sounds great.
Sweet. So I'm not going to try and make you sound old, but how long have you been running Google Ads?
Oh man, I have to think about it, to be honest. It's been a long time.
All right. So regardless, it's been a long time, and I think it's that's the perfect answer for what I was looking for. But I think for me, I got my start running Google Ads campaigns at an agency. It's been a long time since I did that, and so much has changed since then. But I think what many people who are listening to DGU would find helpful is your take on what are some of the top 3 things that you wish you knew now when you first started running Google Ads campaigns.
The first thing that comes to mind is that you bid on keywords, but you pay for search terms. A lot of people will bid on certain keywords. So for us, maybe that's something like demand gen platform, metadata, ABM software, these types of things. And we think just because we're bidding on those keywords that is what somebody's actually searching when they go to Google and they click on our ad and they go to our landing page. But the reality is you could be bidding on those keywords, and based on your match types, your negative keywords, and your targeting, you could be showing up for the most random things that are completely off base of what that primary keyword is that you're trying to get in front of. So that's a key distinction that I see all the time. So just understand that you're bidding on keywords, but you're ultimately paying for those search terms and those clicks, right? So really making sure that you're looking at the search terms report regularly, especially if it's a new campaign, you don't have a negative keyword list built out, just so you can do a quality check. And as close to perfect as possible, you want that search terms report to reflect like high intent searches that you're actually trying to show up for.
Now, for the people who are listening, do you think that's something that they typically do, or are they relying on the agency that they work with to do that for them?
They usually rely on agencies to do this. And unfortunately, I've had the good fortune and I guess bad fortune of auditing a lot of Google Ad accounts that are handled by agencies, and sometimes internally as well. There are good agencies out there. And it's a nightmare. The client thinks they're paying $60 a click on something like CRM software, but they're paying, outrageous prices for searches like, dogs for sale. I don't know, something completely off base that's not related to what they're actually trying to bid on. And unfortunately, they don't have visibility into that because they're a little bit too trusting of agencies, and the agencies, of course, are supposed to be monitoring on a daily basis, but they're not necessarily. A pro tip I always recommend to everyone to just get visibility on this is to go into the Google Ads interface, go to the reporting section, and just schedule a daily send, or at least weekly, of the search terms report. And then every week or every day, you can see your search terms report in your inbox, and that'll give you a quality check to just make sure, hey, are we showing up for the right things? And if you have an agency doing this, it can give you visibility into what you're paying for.
I really wish I knew that. That would have come in very handy when I've been burned by that in the past. So that really hits home for me. All right, what's your second learning?
Second biggest thing is running the math, and really running the math so that you can set expectations with yourself. So many people they start advertising on a new channel and they have no real thought process in terms of what does success look like with this channel. So they get emotional, they turn things off, and they don't give it the time that it needs to really, turn into something. So what I always recommend to everybody just starting out is just figure out what your break-even cost per lead is. So just take your average deal size times your lead to close one rate, and then you can get your break-even cost per lead. That'll at least give you that sense of peace where you know, hey, I can spend up to this much to acquire a lead to break even. And you factor that back from revenue, right? So that'll give you that baseline to set those expectations. The unfortunate thing is so many people, especially with Google ads, is they compare Google ads to social or other channels, and you're paying $60 a click on Google. Your cost per lead on average is going to be a lot higher than something on social. But if you look on the back end in terms of those leads converting into deals and those deals converting into revenue, you'll see that the lead to close one rate for Google ads is usually a lot higher because of that intent.
So when you have those types of conversations with our customers and stuff you're doing on the side, is that like a foreign topic to many B2B marketers? Or like kind of walk me through how those conversations go. And I'm sure some go well and lots go not so well.
There's two kind of marketers. It's on the one hand, you ask them, hey, what's your break-even cost per lead, or what's your goal? And they'll say, well, we're trying to get leads for $200. And I'm like, awesome. And can I ask, like, why 200? Is there something significant about that number? Oh, it's just what we get on social, so we're gonna run with that. That's kind of like the one camp of people, and then the other camp of people is, no, we need leads at $200 because our acceptable cost per lead is $200, and we back factor that from revenue, right? And if you can't do it based on revenue, then just do it based on the opportunity amount, but at least it's based on something logical.
So you've got two camps. Give me a rough ballpark. What's the percent breakdown?
Man, it's bad. It's bad. It's bad out there. I'm not gonna lie. I would say it's probably 60% the first camp, 40% the other camp.
Okay. Yeah, we've got a lot of work to do as marketers, but yeah, I think it's something that, and I've run, paid search campaigns back in the day when I first started, and prior to Metadata, I really relied on agencies to do a lot of that for me. And I think for me personally, you don't really know to ask those questions until you get burned by, agencies or making mistakes yourself.
Yep.
Or you have a really good boss that's saying, we're spending X amount on paid search. What's the outcome that this is driving? And until you learn those lessons the hard way, like I didn't really know that those were the questions that I should be asking.
Yeah, when it comes to any of your capture campaigns, where you're going to be measuring in terms of direct attribution, anything direct is all about running the math. Like paid advertising is all about running the numbers, especially if you're doing capture campaigns. If it's demand creation, then it gets a little bit harder in terms of attribution and things like that. But if you're putting in money into campaigns to drive direct outcomes, like all of that is just coming down to the math and getting visibility into what's actually working and driving pipeline for you, so you can scale that further. And that's really the key thing that I think people don't really realize, is how mathematical it is on the paid advertising side of things, and really, nailing in your numbers.
You make it sound so simple, but that's because you're a genius.
Definitely a lot easier said than done. There's definitely tools out there to help, but it's a process.
Awesome. So let's get into your third big learning.
The third biggest learning I wish I would want to know when I started with Google Ads is that you don't have to guess. The beautiful thing, and one of the reasons I love paid advertising, is your account is telling you a story. And that story is being told through metrics. So for example, with Google Ads, it's all about learning how to read your account story. And we're talking about Google Ads here, but it's the same thing with like LinkedIn or Facebook, all these different ad channels. And it's like, if you can start to really understand the metrics, and this comes with time and experience, but essentially like they're telling you a story. So I'll give you a real example. If a client says, why are my ads not being seen on the top of Google? Like I'm searching my keywords and never see my ads. Like why are they not being seen? If you look in your Google Ads account, they have metrics called impression share metrics. And using the impression share metrics, this will give you basically an understanding of all the impressions that you could receive for this campaign based on your targeting. What percentage of that pie are you getting? And there's only two reasons your ad is not going to be seen and you're not going to have a higher impression share. Number one is you have a high search loss to rank, meaning you're losing to the competition, your ad rank is low. Or number two, you're running out of budget. You have a high search loss to budget. So that answers that question. And then from there, you can double click even further. Well, hey, my search loss to rank is really high, meaning I have a low ad rank, all my competitors are beating me. Well, guess what? If you know the formula of ad rank, you know ad rank equals your max cost per click bid times quality score times the expected impact of ad extensions. So now you can triple click even further into which one of those variables of ad rank do you need help on. Is it your quality score? Well, guess what? Quality score breaks down into landing page experience, ad relevance, and expected click-through rate. So you can kind of go down this, rabbit hole and essentially get to the root cause of what's causing that underlying problem.
That's awesome. So I think one last question for you, and one of the things that you mentioned reminded me of this. So I think it's very clear that you're at like a 501 level in paid search, but I think a lot of people out there may not have as much experience in it. So like most things with digital marketing and just B2B marketing in general, there's so much out there, whether it's courses or certifications, you name it. A lot of it's YouTube videos. I do that for a whole lot of what I do. What would you recommend that people check out if they want to, get more familiar with paid search?
Not to shameless plug here, but I do have a YouTube channel with over 40 plus video tutorials.
That was a shameless plug, so keep going.
Over 40 plus video tutorials on Google Ads. So definitely check out my YouTube channel. I have a lot of content there that really breaks everything down. When I first started with paid advertising, everything to me was like foreign. I had no idea. I didn't come out, I wasn't born and I just knew what CTR was, right?
You weren't?
So it was like, I'll never forget it. Like I started with my own DJ business and I went to Google and I searched DJ near me. And I remember seeing the Google ads at the top of the page. I didn't even know it was a Google ad at the time. But from there, I started to research what is that, and then, kind of led down the rabbit hole. But essentially, the one thing I've always tried to keep true with my content and everything is keeping myself in mind of when I had first started. So I try to explain everything as simply as possible with this little jargon. So definitely check out my YouTube channel. Other great resources are like ppchero.com, WordStream has great content. And from there, that's really going to allow you to explore further.
Yes, that was a shameless plug that I probably should have told you about. My whole point of all of this, though, is there's so much good free stuff out there to learn and get more familiar with it. I paid some amounts for programs and courses and whatnot, some very expensive amounts that thankfully previous companies have covered. And I would say for the most part, most of the free stuff has been the best stuff that I've learned from and the stuff that I remember.
The one thing I will say is don't fall into the trap, and I'm guilty of this, of just consuming so much content that you never apply anything. There's 3 levels to mastery. There's knowing, there's doing, and there's living. You might know it, but until you start to practice and do it, you're not going to get real learnings. And then more so than that, until you do it on a consistent basis and live it, it's truly never going to, stick.
So this was not in our outline, but that was a perfect point that you made. How did you start to take it from, hey, I'm reading up on this to actually applying it?
You have to pull out your credit card and start spending money. You have to create an ad account, right? You have to put into practice all the things you're learning. So if you've learned about campaign structure, etc., go in there, start to build the campaign, get familiar with the interface, start to click around. Hey, what is this section? What is this? For example, I'm learning TikTok ads right now. I wouldn't consider myself an expert, but I've been running tests on TikTok. And the first thing I did was I created a TikTok ads account. I started to play around in the UI. What is this? What are the different things that they offer? And the beautiful thing about paid advertising is once you start to get into it and everything starts to click, all these different ad channels are very similar to each other. So the learning curve gets exponentially lower. It's always in the beginning that anything is always the hardest. So yeah, definitely create an ad account, start to play around in the UI, and then start to try to just create some campaigns. And if you don't have any money to spend to get started, then just create campaigns in draft as if you were going to create a full campaign, and then just start there. And then eventually, hopefully you can get some budget to test. I always recommend to all marketers to create your own blog or something of your own that you can promote, so that way you can get hands-on experience. For example, with TikTok ads, I'm doing a lot of the tests with my own budget, my own stuff that I'm doing, and I'm proving things out. So now I can go to Mark and Jason and be like, hey, we need to run TikTok ads, and here's why. Look at all the data that I have.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you mentioned, and I'm sure this probably holds true with your DJ paid search ads and back in the day, and then some of these TikTok ads now, when it's your own money and you're seeing, how much money you're spending and that you don't have an endless budget, I feel like you learn that much faster because you're so much more mindful of, how much money is being spent.
1,000%. It is a skill. A lot of people think that the more budget you have, the more results you're going to get, and that's not necessarily true. By fast forward to today, I'm personally overseeing more than 7 figures a month in ad spend, and I can tell you like that early beginnings and the thought process of how to optimize and how to scale and how to find inefficiencies in your campaigns still holds true to this day.
Got to start somewhere. Awesome. That was super helpful and insightful. I think I even learned a few things from there. So next thing, I feel like Google Ads is constantly changing, from what I knew it to be and what it looked like to what it is today. I was looking at I think it was a Search Engine Journal article, and they were talking about 3 big things that every B2B marketer and really marketer in general should be aware of in 2022. So I want to talk through those first. The first one is the future of measurement. So everyone's been impacted by iOS 14, some more than others, but kind of talk me through the future of measurement in Google Ads this year.
The future is going to be server-side tracking. Google already has this available. So essentially, what does that mean? That basically means tying your conversions to your CRM data. So Google has an integration with Salesforce where you can do this, but essentially counting conversions based on activity that happens in your CRM. So a new lead gets created in your CRM, or a new opportunity or a new closed won deal. You can push those signals back into Google Ads to record them as conversions. So that's going to be huge, especially with things like iOS 14 and pixels becoming more and more inefficient. Just to give people more context on iOS 14, on Facebook, if a user does not consent to being tracked on their mobile device, and Facebook recognizes a conversion from that user, but they said that they don't want to be tracked, Facebook cannot accept that conversion. So conversion data is going to be more and more scarce as things with privacy continue to occur and come up.
This is the part of the episode where I just get out of Silvio's way because he's running laps around me when it comes to this stuff. So walk me through that Salesforce integration, and I guess what is that able to provide B2B marketers?
Yeah, so basically, just to take a step back, the way it works is whenever somebody clicks on your ad, so in this case Google, there is a click ID associated with that click. What we're doing is we're capturing that click ID, and we are capturing it into your marketing automation tool, and we're basically capturing that click ID and then that lead record. So we can say, hey, this lead came from this Google ad based on this click ID, and then we can re-upload that conversion into Google Ads so that they can understand, hey, a conversion happened. So by associating the click ID and the actual lead record, it's a real lead because you can actually look it up in your database, right? And using the click ID, that's how you're able to combine the two together. And you can do a bunch of cool stuff. So you can push, new leads, new MQLs, new SQLs, whatever your sales funnel looks like, new opportunities. You can even do some really cool things such as value-based bidding, which Google is moving more and more towards, where essentially, because you're pushing that opportunity data back into Google Ads, you can also push the opportunity amount. So essentially, Google can start to prioritize these different conversion actions for you. Right? The smarter you can make Google to drive the outcomes you want, the better off you're going to be. The simplest way to do this is you can just create a conversion action for new lead, new MQL, new SQL, whatever your flow looks like. And you can just assign like a dollar value for a new lead, $2 for a new MQL, $3 for an SQL, $4 for an opportunity. And that's enough to just have Google be able to say, hey, an opportunity is worth more to this business than a lead. So let's prioritize driving more of that.
So I'm going to pretend like I know what I'm talking about here. I believe they call that G-CLID for those in the know, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So
yeah, G-CLID. Facebook has it too. Facebook has a click ID. You can do the same thing with Facebook. It doesn't have to just be the Salesforce integration. So HubSpot also has a direct integration with Google Ads, and HubSpot actually makes it easier where you can easily upload those events into the Google Ads interface for conversion tracking. You can also, if you don't have HubSpot or Salesforce, you can do this with like a third-party tool such as Zapier. And the main thing you're trying to do is you're just trying to store the G-CLID onto the contact record and then push that offline conversion back into the tool. And you can use Zapier to do that.
Legit. All right. The next big thing to look out for in 2022. So Google's added quite a bit around automation and like new performance max and discovery campaign types. So for the the listeners, including myself, who need to know what that means and how it's going to impact them, give
You
us your
said the
take.
P word, performance max. Yeah, it's, I think right now the Google Ads community is, I would say, the most part terrified with Performance Max in the sense of basically, for those listening, Performance Max is a new campaign type that Google is testing right now, where they will basically automate everything. So they'll be able to deploy your campaigns on search, on YouTube, on Discover. So essentially, you give Google all your different assets, and then they're fully in control, and they will deploy your assets across all the different Google properties that they own. So it's like automation at its fullest. It's currently in test. I've only ran one Performance Max campaign. My performance was not the best. From other people that I've spoken to in the industry, they haven't had a lot of success with it. So I think it's early. It'll be interesting to see what they're doing. But the main takeaway here is Google is moving more and more towards automation, right? Performance Max is one example of that. They also have things such as smart campaigns, which is like simplified campaigns that you create. Whenever you create a Google ad campaign, they ask you what your goal is, your objective. And what people don't realize is when you choose those different objectives, what they're really doing is they are auto adjusting the campaign settings that you have available. So for example, if I choose my objectives to like drive leads, then they're going to filter the bid strategies available. They're going to filter the different settings available that I can choose from based on what they think is going to allow me to, drive that goal that I'm after. Versus if I just choose like, no goals guidance, basically like you can choose like basically like you don't have a goal and that you want all the options. You have all the different tools available, and you can choose whatever you want. But all these different things essentially Google is trying to do to make things more automated, more streamlined, so that way advertisers don't have to be performance marketing experts, and they can just let Google do all the heavy lifting.
So I'm going to ask you to get back on your soapbox here in a second. Now, whether it's Google Ads or Facebook Ads or LinkedIn Ads or whatever ad channel you're using, oftentimes they are making recommendations that you sometimes should not listen to because it will get you to spend more money and run more money through their platform, because that's how.
Wait, are you
money.
saying I shouldn't include search and display in the same campaign?
So get back on your soapbox and tell me and everyone who's listening, like, what are some of the things that, hey, yes, you're seeing it in Google Ads as a recommendation, but think twice before you accept that right away or listen to it.
Yeah, biggest one that comes to mind is if you just listen to Google, at the end of the day, Google wants you to do two things. They want you to use pure broad match on your keyword, so pure broad match, and they want you to use automated bidding. So if you ask a Google rep, that's what they're going to recommend. And there is a time and place for that, but for most advertisers, that's not the place where you want to get started. So pure broad match is literally telling Google, hey, Google, show my ads for any searches that you deem remotely relevant based on your machine learning prowess. And it sounds great in theory, but in terms of like actual reality, it can be really challenging, right? You're going to show up for a lot of junk. So what I always recommend to new Google advertisers is to start as laser focused as possible. So I think about it in terms of two parts. Like you really you need to nail down the traffic piece, and then from there you need to nail down the conversion piece. So setting up your Google ad campaigns, really leverage things such as phrase match, exact match, match types. So that way you're really showing up to the highest quality searches possible. And if your search terms report is as close to perfect as possible, then from there you've kind of nailed the traffic part. Now the other side of the equation is all about the conversion piece. Is your landing page converting? Is it, is there a message match where your keyword you're adding your landing page are in alignment? Does your landing page follow best practices? Can I understand what you do in 5 seconds or less? All that stuff is going to go into making sure you're converting that traffic. But yeah, if you ask Google, they're going to tell you to do pure broad match and to leverage automated bidding.
If you take anything away from this episode, and hopefully you take away a whole lot, I feel like that was the gold of what to avoid and how to not burn your budget, because we've all been there before.
Yep, unfortunately.
Awesome. And then the last thing that I was reading in the article was just around digital privacy. So I feel like it's a new day, it's a new privacy breach somewhere. Google's updated their privacy playbook. So I guess what does that mean for advertisers, and is there anything that they need to know?
As of right now, nothing alarming for us. I would say in the future, if Google decides to play by similar rules as Facebook, then that's when we are going to have to really make some changes. Right now, with Google Ads using server-side conversion tracking, whether that's through Salesforce, HubSpot, Zapier, whatever it is, but doing those offline conversion imports, that's going to improve your measurement by like 95% in terms of accuracy. But with Facebook, you can do offline conversion imports, and it still is not going to recognize all the conversions because people have to complicitly comply to being tracked, right? So you're always going to have a conversion deficit. So moving into the future of Google Ads, the two things that are going to be the most important is high quality conversion data that is tied to your CRM, and then creating high quality audiences. So as things happen with privacy and things like that, these channels are not going to be able to track users based on certain things like third party segments, etc. So audience targeting is going to be scarce as well. So if you can get as much high quality audience targeting and you can track things based on real conversions offline, and you can feed this high quality data into the ad channel so they know how to better optimize, and then you can leverage all these different great audience sources, then that's going to really give you a key advantage.
I love it. Now, before we get into the third part of this episode, we're going to get into story time, which was originally supposed to be the first story that you told, but I did not know that you were going to tell your DJ business story with paid search ads that I love. So I'll give a little bit of context first. I'll make you tell your side of the story, and then we'll get into what we're really excited to launch. So we're recording this episode in February of 2022. I had joined Metadata in August of 2020, and I think very quickly after I joined, our sales team started to hear, and many conversations with prospects. Call me back when you guys have Google Ads. Call me back when you guys have Google Ads. And we were like, oh, okay, maybe there's something there. And we kept hearing it and hearing it and hearing it and hearing it. And we realized as a consultant for kind of like this exploration as a new channel, right?
I think my official title was like experimentation evangelist.
I actually knew that, and I was dying because I've only seen Guy Kawasaki as like Apple.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so I started as a consultant here at Metadata, and the way it happened was actually really funny. I had no plans for it. So Marcel basically, he told me, he's like, hey, the VP of product at Metadata would love to talk to you about Google Ads. Do you mind hopping on a call with her? I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And I'm an open book. I like to share stuff. And I get on a call with Elena, and she's like, oh my God, this is amazing. Can we do another call? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I get on the second call with Elena, and it's Jason and Elena, and they completely ambush me. I had no idea this was going to happen. And Jason's like, hey, man, so, we want you to help us build Google Ads into Metadata and help the marketing team. And I was just like, I don't even know if I have the time for this. Like, I had a pretty good thing going on, but basically, eventually, fast forward a couple of months, I agreed. And actually, I agreed then. And then fast forward a couple of months later, I hung out with Olivier. He got me drunk, and then I agreed to be full time.
And we couldn't be happier that you joined us full time. I know we've been working together for a while. It feels so much longer for all the right reasons and in the best ways, but we're lucky to have you. So now that we got the story time out of the way, let's talk through what we're announcing. So we are actually announcing Google Ads as a new channel in our own platform. So Silvio, I'm going to kind of guide you here, but you tell me what that means for Metadata customers and future Metadata customers.
Absolutely. So that means following best practices in terms of campaign execution, much easier through Metadata. So essentially, when I worked with product and helped design Google Ads into the platform, I really kept it with like the best practices in mind. So for example, when you create, there's a lot of little things that if you just don't know, unfortunately, you're just going to pay as they call it, the dumb tax of just not knowing it, right, and making those mistakes. So essentially, we're automating a lot of things on the back end. So when you build a campaign through Metadata, it's going to be a very simplified user experience, just like with the other channels that we have, where you can select keywords, you can select ads, you can select your different landing pages. When you go to build a campaign in Google Ads, you have 50 different options, right? And if you don't know what you're doing, it's very easy to make a mistake. So we're just trying to automate as many best practices in terms of campaign execution. So what does that mean specifically? That means, for example, not combining search and display. That means, allowing you to choose between the best bid strategies versus just, some of the other ones. That means when you launch campaigns through metadata, guess what? You have match types applied to your keywords, so you don't make silly mistakes. And of course, you can change it if you want to. But really automating the campaign execution is a big one. And then also allowing clients to get a full perspective, a holistic perspective in terms of how does Google Ads interface across the other channels as well. So you can very easily see Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, and then all the other channels that we integrate with in metadata, and just see from total spend all the way down to triggered opportunity what's working. And more importantly than that, you can drill down to the keyword level and see which keywords are actually driving leads, MQLs, opportunities for you, so you can very easily scale those things.
Amazing. I didn't really have to say much there because you nailed it. So I would say one thing, and I ask this question because I grew up and I'm thankful for this, but when I started running paid search ads right out of school, the two managing directors at our agency were maniacal about segmentation and hyper segmentation. So we had to get down to the one-to-one setup manually, and it took forever. So talk me through, I guess, why that matters and how you can do it with metadata and Google Ads.
Yeah, absolutely. So the main reason why it matters is because that's how you're going to get visibility into what works and what doesn't. And more so than that, that's how you're going to be able to guarantee that those things that are working for you, those keywords, those ads, those landing pages, get the budget that they deserve because they're performing well. When you just have one campaign with, 10 ad groups, and then let's just say 10 keywords per ad group, and the campaign budget is being applied at the, at the campaign level, well, guess what? Like maybe two of those ad groups, and within those two ad groups, two of those keywords are doing all the heavy lifting. So because you're distributing that budget across all those other variables, those top performers are not getting as much spend as they could be, meaning you're missing out on potential scale. So essentially with metadata, we're allowing you to have a one-to-one structure with one keyword, one ad, one landing page. And then that allows you to very easily see which experiments are driving the most performance for you. And then you can streamline those things. And then also in metadata as well, we have things such as automation rules that just streamlines the optimization. So, if this experiment spends more than X without generating a lead, turn it off. If, CPL or cost per MQL or cost per opportunity is more than Y, turn it off. And then we also have our algorithm as well, which is not just looking at your Google ad experiments, but also your Facebook and LinkedIn experiments, prioritizing the different experiments based on performance, and then auto-allocating budget across those different variables.
And let's say, for a client that's running, I don't know, 50K in Google ads every month, and they're not taking that one-to-one approach. That probably is incredibly misleading because you don't know kind of what's working and what's driving the right outcomes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too, that why it matters is because Google Ads has something called quality score. And basically it's a measurement of how relevant your ads are to what the searchers are looking for. And that's broken out by your ad relevance, your expected click-through rate, and your landing page experience. So essentially what Google wants is when people go to Google and they search what they're looking for, they find it, so they come back to Google again and search again in the future. So the closer you can be to what the searcher is looking for, the more Google is going to reward you with a higher quality score, meaning you pay less per click and you outrank the competition. So by having this structure, you can very easily make it where, hey, if I'm bidding on a keyword talking about ABM software, my ad should have ABM software in the ad copy, and then it should drive them to a landing page that talks about ABM software. So that's also another key benefit of doing this.
So let's talk through two final things, kind of the initial release and what the future looks like. So what are some of the most exciting things for B2B marketers that they'll be able to